Hi everybody, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on traditional Aboriginal lands across the country and pay my respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded. For those of you I don't know, my name is Alison Barnes and I'm National President of the mighty National Tertiary Education Union. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's fantastic forum. It's fantastic to have so many mighty NTEU members, but I'd like to welcome those of you who are less familiar with our union. Elizabeth told me yesterday that we had people joining us from New Zealand, so I'm very excited about that. So it's fantastic to have so many NTEU members with us today. But if you're not an NTEU member, I'd really like you to consider joining, because we can achieve so much when we stand together. Today is an exciting day. We're here to celebrate our union's gender affirmation wins, which in this round of bargaining, NTEU members across the country have put on the agenda at every single university. I'm really proud of NTEU activists and reps in our branches who fought for this, and I'm really proud that as a result, our union is at the forefront of this claim for landmark entitlements. Achieving gender affirmation leave is good for NTEU members and our sector, but it has a much broader impact. When these clauses are won in our agreements, they'll be used in unions across the country and set a benchmark for other industries. Today is not just, however, a celebration of our wins, but we're also here to launch a handbook that has been put together by NTEU members so that people both within our union and those in other unions can learn from the lessons from our campaign and use the tools that have been developed by our members to organise in their workplace. Erin is going to place a copy of the handbook in the chat so you can all download it. Before we begin today's discussion and I introduce our three fantastic speakers, I have a quick couple of housekeeping notes. Thanks to all of those of you who've submitted questions in advance. We're going to answer some of those in today's meeting, and some of those we're going to answer after the meeting in emails. After the presentations, we're going to have around 20 minutes for questions, and we're going to answer as many of those as we can. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function and I'll call on you to speak. To ensure that speakers can be heard when they're talking, we're going to mute everybody whilst people are speaking. If you have any further questions or things that don't get answered during the session, please email them to rveal@nteu.org.au. That's rveal@nteu.org.au. So we're going to kick off today's presentation with our General Secretary, with the NTEU's General Secretary, Damien Carl, who will then be followed by Sophie Fife and Sean McCulkey. Sean and Sophie are both really active in our CUTE committee. They're on our steering committee, and they've been really central to the campaigns for gender affirmation leave, both at their own campuses. In Sophie's case, that's Sydney University, and at Sean's, it's La Trobe University, but more broadly across our union. So before I also pass to Damien, I just want to acknowledge the work that Amy Sargent's done, our chair of CUTE, who sadly can't be here with us today. And I'd like to acknowledge all the work that CUTE has done more broadly during the course of this campaign and in the production of this handbook. So I'd like us all to give a silent hand clap. You can all use the clap emoji thing to sort of celebrate the fantastic work that CUTE has done in campaigning for gender affirmation leave and putting this fantastic handbook together. So this is going to be a very exciting session and much cause for celebration. Over to you, Damien.
Thanks, Alison. I've just acknowledged that I'm on stolen Aboriginal land and sovereignty was never ceded. I'm just going to say a few remarks by way of setting the context. And Alison, like you, I'm really proud to be here in this seminar today, because we're here to celebrate a really significant and path-breaking achievement by our union. And that achievement is that we've managed to win paid gender affirmation leave in every single public university in Australia which has an NTEU negotiated agreement. And in fact, the only places where we haven't achieved it in the public university sector so far in Australia are those places where we're still in negotiations. And I'm confident that we, by the end of this round of bargaining, so that's only at another seven sites, I'm confident that by the end of this round of bargaining, hopefully within a couple of months, we will have achieved paid gender affirmation leave at every single public university across the country, which is an amazing achievement. And I might be wrong, but I'm not aware of another union that's managed to win paid gender affirmation leave as a sector-wide reform, which is, I think, what we will have done by the end of this round. If anyone has more information on that, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know there are some other unions who are pursuing this, but I think that achievement really puts us at the forefront of change. And it might have surprised many if you were to tell them back in 2021 when we kicked off this bargaining campaign, because that's when our enterprise agreements were expiring across the country. If you told people back then that we would have won such an achievement, such a sector-wide reform, and effectively, hopefully, universalised paid gender affirmation leave as a workplace right across the public university sector. And that's because at that time, back in 2021, paid gender affirmation leave was just one of a suite of claims that the union was pursuing. And as a union at that stage, we hadn't actually formally prioritised it as a union as something that we would try and win nationally at every single university. But I think it's important to acknowledge that that changed, and it changed because NTEU members, led by transgender, non-binary members and allies, campaigned within the NTEU for paid gender affirmation leave to be prioritised by the union. And then that was debated and discussed within the internal democratic processes of the union, and we did prioritise it as something that we wanted to win everywhere. So I think the story then of the transformation of the sector with respect to paid gender affirmation leave is also, at least in part, a story of the transformation of the union. And I think this should be properly situated within the broader struggles and campaigns by transgender and gender diverse people for rights and recognition within society more generally. And I think that that is a good thing. And I mention that because I think it helps to demonstrate that the campaign for paid gender affirmation leave by the union, by the NTEU, is very much in keeping with our history, because historically the NTEU has always been at the forefront of advocating for and winning workplace rights for marginalised groups. And often in doing so, we've been well in advance of significant sections of the labour movement. I think that's true for gender affirmation leave, but it's also true for things like our prioritisation of winning employment targets for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander workers, paid domestic violence leave, and such rights. So I think it's well in keeping with the history of the NTEU. And just a final remark I'd make, I actually think that what we've achieved as a union in winning paid gender affirmation leave has broader significance too, because as will no doubt be discussed, although we haven't won this everywhere, at a small number of universities, we've won paid gender affirmation leave for all workers in the university. That is for casuals as well as for staff on fixed term and ongoing contracts. And that's significant because in most employment contracts, by definition, casuals do not have access to any form of paid leave. And as we know, one of the myths of casual employment in Australia and in the university sector is that the 25% loading that casuals get compensates for lack of access to paid leave and other entitlements. And so I think the victory in winning paid gender affirmation leave for casuals at some of our universities is part of eroding that myth that casual loading compensates for a lack of paid leave, and it puts a marker in the ground and it shows what is possible to achieve. And I think that's something we can look to extend in the next round of bargaining but not only for paid gender affirmation leave, extending that to casuals, but extending paid leave to casuals more generally. So just to conclude, Alison, I'm really proud to be here as the General Secretary of a union that has advocated for and won such a significant change. And I'm really proud to be here with members of the union who are at the forefront of winning that change as well. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Damien. Now I'm going to pass to you, Sophie.
Great. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks. I really echo everything that Damien's just said. I think it's really significant that we've got a national secretary and president standing in front of the meeting today. I want to start by talking about the national significance, and in my view, actually international significance of what we've done. I made a table during bargaining while we were fighting for these things to try and understand where do we fit in the sector. And the NTEU was actually the first enterprise agreement I can find anywhere to win gender affirmation leave at all, which was at UNSW back in 2018, which was you know, as we you know, it was a stake in the ground for us to move forwards, and we've seen it proliferating across other sectors. But one of the kind of hugely significant things about our campaign, and Damien mentioned some of the other sectors that have been doing work on this. The ASU was actually the Australian Services Union was the first union ever to win annual gender affirmation leave as an annual entitlement, not something you're, oh, am I going to give it? Am I going to run out this year? I have to use it. Oh, you know, I want to go to this appointment, but I won't use it this year. As just as an entitlement, like sick leave, like annual leave, like anything else. And that was very significant. They did so after a day of strike action. And the FSU has done a national campaign, but unfortunately they've run into a lot of difficulties. And so all of our solidarity to, there's one person from the FSU here, all our solidarity to the FSU in that struggle. But what I'm about to just share with you is a little picture, and apologies, I just saw David in the room and I've realized I've uploaded the wrong version of this document that doesn't include Melbourne Uni and a number of others. So apologies in advance, shame on me, shame upon my soul. I just want to give you a picture with kind of green ticks of where we're at. And this is conservative actually, because Melbourne and some of the best sites are uploaded wrong. But if you look at the number of annual ticks that you can see there, just one other union has ever won annual gender affirmation leave, ever. So we are really, that is really path setting, and the fact that we're having wins for casual workers as well is incredible. And I just think this is kind of a path breaking thing. Even at ACU, a workplace where it's still technically, I also work at ACU, it's technically legal for them to sack me on the basis of my gender identity, because they are a religious educational institution, which in New South Wales have that right. Yet even there, we've managed to push this agenda. So this is, I think, quite significant for us. And I just want to say as well that from a claim, I mean, Damien's right, that claim for 30 days per annum actually started here at Sydney University with a small number of us writing a letter to our local union saying, oh, we actually think 30 days per annum is a really fair claim and that we should put that in. And so our union did put that in. And not only that, but it was globalized or nationalized or whatever you want to call it across the union and taken up as a demand. And this week, I'm very proud to see that the CPSU in Western Australia has put forward a claim for 30 days per annum gender affirmation leave across the public service there. And I think we can see that, you know, a rising tide really does lift all boats, and that's been quite a significant shift from a tiny demand to a whole union taking it up to other unions taking it up, I think is a very significant thing. But I do want to say, I guess, put it in situation that it was a struggle. This was not something that was beneficently handed down to us from friendly universities across, because I think that's how it will be presented. In reality, when we first put forward this claim, Stuart Andrews, who is the head, who's involved in AHIA, people may know, the Australian Higher Education Industry Association, which he put out a statement saying that this was, quote, way above community standards and a great frustration. That's what he said about gender affirmation leave when we first started fighting for it. And I didn't think we were going to win 30 days per annum. I didn't think we were going to win it for casuals, and I was proved wrong because we took it with both hands and we fought. And I want to show a little bit of a flavor of that struggle across the sector. Luckily there's no more words, it's just pictures in what I want to show, but just to give you a vision of what this fight has looked like in the last couple of years. So one really important place was University of Tasmania, where they originally put forward a 20 days per annum. And then after they saw the reasoning, they said, oh, 30 days per annum is a much fairer claim. They brought that to the university, and the university said, you know what, we'll just give you 10, actually. And that kind of, we all rallied around that. We had a petition, which I've just put up there, a national petition. We put national shame. We had rallies here in Sydney where we called out University of Tasmania to do better. We put all the pressure on it as nationally, and we won. And that was the first workplace I've seen in the world to win 30 days per annum gender affirmation leave, which was path breaking. And it wasn't just a national campaign. There are so many local little flavors that I'm just going to flick up quickly. So this is, I went down to University of Wollongong, and unbeknownst to me, a bunch of the workers there were handing out this, people on the bargaining team there were handing out this excellent leaflet explaining the claim, talking to the LGBT community about the importance for it. At Uni of Sydney, we had a fight here, a fight that we weren't as successful as other people were. Unfortunately, we have a very Senate that is hell-bent on not giving us a drop more leave. This is a picture of our national poster. And I also just want to flick up we had one of our national meetings. This was a contingent that we had to our strike. This was the picture we put up. And these are just some images of what our strike campaign at Sydney Uni looks like when we were trying to push them. A giant banner, people standing with trans rights on the picket line, which I just think was so exciting. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, just to say that it hasn't been easy. And as Damien said, it was also a process of internal transformation. This isn't just a question of a leave entitlement sitting over there that will be helpful. It's actually about addressing structural transphobia. We know, and Sean will go over this in a second, some of the structural barriers, the reason why trans people quit their jobs in massive numbers, and why they struggle to find employment again. But also that I have experienced a lot of transphobia at this university. We have transphobic feminists on campus who see us as kind of invading their spaces, and who are very hostile to some of the stuff that we've been fighting for, and we've also had transphobia within the union. That has been a struggle, and I think that's why it's so significant. I was actually really moved. Lachlan in this meeting from the ACT spoke at our national meeting about kind of when we were fighting alongside one another for gender affirmation leave, and having these kind of people trying to join the meeting, trying to distract from the union, attack the union, distract the meetings. It became clear that these people were not fighting for women's rights, that they were actually just trying to tear us down. And the people who were fighting for women's rights in all kinds of ways, parental leave, menstrual and menopausal leave, all of our claims about sexism were actually on the side of the union, and they were on the side of the picketers who were fighting. And actually many of the conditions that we won at Sydney University have benefited both women and trans people alike. For instance, we have for menstrual and menopausal leave, IVF, and gender affirmation leave, you don't need to give any evidential requirements for leaves of 5 days. So I think there's so much solidarity and potential, but it needed a fight both with the universities and within ourselves. So I'm really proud of every single person across the sector who's taken part in this. We've been striking, we've been fighting, petitioning, rallying all across the sector. And I think that has really put a dent in transphobia. And I think for other unions across the world, I've been disappointed by some of them and their positions on transphobia and kind of entertaining transphobic feminism. I really think they should look to the NTEU, they should read our booklet, and they should think about another way that a union can stand up, say, touch one, touch all, and keep up the fight.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sophie. That was such an inspiring speech. I'm going to now pass to Sean. Sean.
Thanks, Alison. And I wanted to talk a bit about how we organised and won this campaign. I remember when we first started campaigning for gender affirmation leave, I had a lot of people in the workplace, sometimes even comrades in the union, saying, our university management's on board. We've been discussing this with them for years. They'll give it to us because they're kind and charitable and nice. And let me tell you that we did not win this out of the generosity of university management. As Sophie touched on, this is something that we fought for and won as a movement of unionists. So how did we win this campaign? Well, the first step is that we had to educate our own membership and our own workforce about the need for gender affirmation leave. So we knew from the beginning that we needed to have buy-in and broad buy-in from across our membership if we were to pursue this as a claim and then win it as a claim in bargaining. So how do we do this? We have workshops explaining what our claim is, stepping people through it so that they understood, explaining why we're making the claim, how it will benefit our workforce, and also what we stand to win from having gender affirmation leave across our universities. And what was important in these forums is that we privilege the voices of those most affected by this claim. So trans and gender diverse workers that would benefit from gender affirmation leave and be impacted if we weren't able to win it in our workforces. Because we know that roughly 90% of trans people will leave their workplace while they're affirming their gender. And that's for a number of different reasons. It can be due to stigma or discrimination, and it can also be due to just the lack of workplace supports. And gender affirmation leave in this sense is not just about the opportunity to take leave. It's about something much more important than that. It's actually about keeping people in a job and giving them some job security as well too. And what gender affirmation leave can be, where it's successfully won, is a stepping stone to other claims like reproductive health leave for women and gender diverse workers in the workplace. This can include things like menstrual leave or menopause leave, making sure that parental leave is inclusive and accessible. So really, gender affirmation leave has much more benefits than leave itself. It's about keeping people in secure jobs, and it's about being a stepping stone to other bolder claims that we can make in the future. And it wasn't easily won. But we have won it across every workplace agreement that we've negotiated. And I particularly want to shout out comrades at the Australian Catholic University who managed to win it in their workplace. And I think the fact that we won it in the Australian Catholic University is a sign that we can win it in difficult workplaces, religious schools and the like, religious charities and otherwise. So the win that we've had is not just because we deal in the, what is sometimes seen as a woke or progressive higher education sector. We're also winning it in what be seen as religious or more conservative workplaces as well too. And we need to remember that the Australian Catholic University Agreement is signed off by bishops. So we had to persuade the bishops to give staff gender affirmation leave, and we did, and that is attributable not to the generosity of the bishops, I don't think, but to the hard work of unionists at the Australian Catholic University. But of course, we need to do more work to end discrimination against LGBTQ+ workers in religious workplaces. And that's why it's so important that the government implement the recommendations of the Australian Law Reform Commission's report around reducing religious exemptions that allow religious educational institutions to discriminate against LGBTQ+ staff. We've shown that we can win progressive claims in difficult workplaces like the Australian Catholic University, but everybody working at religious workplaces deserves dignity and to be entitled to a safe and secure job. Of course, we've had some fantastic wins. We've won it in every agreement that we've successfully negotiated, but there's still some down the track to go. And I want to give a big shout out to our comrades at Monash University and RMIT who are currently on strike at the moment. Please support them if you can, amplify their strike actions because they are striking to win this and many other claims for their workers. I also want to give a shout out to comrades at UNE and Swinburne who are dealing with very intransigent management, one of which seems more focused on improving the Vice-Chancellor's ensuite than actually getting good workplace policies and conditions in place for their workers. And I also want to give a shout out to comrades at Southern Cross and VU and Wollongong who are still in negotiations for their agreements too. And I'm very confident due to the strength of their branches that we will win these conditions across those workplaces as well too. But now, as we've won it in so many workplaces, we need to move from entitlement to enforcement. And that's why our new gender affirmation leave handbook is so important. And there's two particular things that I want to highlight. It's really fantastic that we've won this claim, but we first need to ensure that people can claim this leave without experiencing stigma and discrimination. We need to ensure that people are supported to make leave claims, that if they experience stigma and discrimination when they do, they can go to their union and we can support them to escalate that matter and ensure that they can claim the leave without having to deal with difficult managers or supervisors that are creating a block to them accessing that leave. And secondly, and relatedly, we need to ensure that there are no unreasonable barriers in place so that people can claim this leave, and no unreasonable evidential requirements. We're already starting to hear, and I've seen in some of the questions that have been submitted, that people are having to submit copious documents in order to claim this leave. We need to break those barriers down to make it smooth and easy for people to claim the leave when they need to. So our gender affirmation leave handbook will be sent around after this meeting. I encourage you to read and engage with it and reach out to us if you have any questions or anything we can do to support you in your workplaces as well too. But I also have 3 asks for you. Firstly, that you get in touch with queer unionists in tertiary education. We're here to support you and to ensure that you can win this claim at your university, that you can enforce this claim at your university, but you can also make your workplaces better places for LGBTIQA+ staff. Secondly, we're looking at starting up local queer organising groups at a divisional or statewide or territory-wide level, but also at university levels as well too. So if you're interested in starting up a group at your university, please do get in touch and we can offer you support in that regard. And thirdly, contact your local ally and staff pride networks at your workplace or university and ask them to distribute the booklet. We know sometimes that pride staff networks can be a little bit apolitical, but what they should be doing is ensuring that our workplaces are safe for LGBTIQA+ workers and ensuring that people can access gender affirmation leave easily and simply. So just to repeat those asks, if you can get in touch with us at Queer Unions in Tertiary Education or Q, think about whether you might want to set up a group at your university or workplace and ensure that you distribute this handbook to your staff, pride and ally networks as well too. And by doing all of that, we can continue winning this claim across universities and ensuring that the claim is properly enforced. Thanks.
Fantastic, John. Some great asks for everyone from the meeting and some great shout outs in terms of solidarity with our workmates who are still in bargaining. So I'm going to open it up now for questions. I'm going to start with one of the questions that's been sent to us in advance, and it's from Scarlett at the University of Melbourne. I think Scarlett is actually with us today. The question is, how would accessing JAL look for those working as working in casual teaching positions? Damien, do you want to start off?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the table that Sophie put up earlier. So unfortunately, we only managed to win it at, I think, about 3 institutions, an explicit right for casual staff to access paid gender affirmation leave. So I think at those institutions, there's a clear right in the agreement. I don't want to give unrealistic expectations about the prospect of being able to access it elsewhere. It's something the union could advocate for, but we can't guarantee that we'd be successful if there's no clear right in the agreement. It's definitely something that we need to campaign to extend in the next round of enterprise bargaining. And I actually think, given that we've put that marker in the ground, we've got good prospects of extending it in the next round of bargaining, but we will have to struggle for it, just as we did now. So I'm sorry I don't have better news on that. But nonetheless, I wouldn't want to underestimate the achievement of extending it to casuals at those sites. But it is something that NTEU could take up on an individual or collective basis, even when there is no right. But we can't guarantee that we'd be successful if it's not in the enterprise agreement.
Yes, Sophie, I think you want to say something there too.
Yeah, this is also an apology to Melbourne University comrades who have pointed out in the chat that they want not only 30 days per annum, but 30 days per annum for casual staff. That is just a gold standard clause that we will, that is basically has been what we've kind of put into this handbook as an idea clause that people can work with, including people from other unions. And just to say that the question of casual entitlements is entirely a political one. We are fighting for it. Managements will claim it's an administrative impossibility, and they are lying. It is a political problem. It is an economic problem with them trying to, protect their butts. And I'm very happy that behind me is our poster, because we won sick leave for casual staff at Sydney University. We now have it 5 days per annum, which is again a start from which we can fight on. But I just think, yeah, I think like to anyone who's like there are these holes, there are problems. Every little win, you get some of what you want, but not everything. And I think it should just be really more like if those pride networks were turned into union organizing networks, we would probably have casual sick leave, casual gender affirmation leave across the country. And so it remains for us to do that actual organizing work, I think.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie. Now's the time to start raising your hand if you have a question to ask. But while you are doing that, I might go to a question from Finn, who might actually be on my screen. Finn, I'm not sure if it's the same Finn. Finn from Fed University. I'm partly asking this because I like the beginning, although we've partly answered it already in today's presentation. Congratulations. I love that we have this in our enterprise agreements. I'm curious to know what the journey to get here was like. Did negotiating teams have to pedal really hard to get this, or did some universities move quite willingly? Uneven across the sector, I would say. But Sophie, Damien, Sean, anything you'd like to say in answer to this?
Oh, I mean, I think Sophie and Sean have already indicated the answer is it was difficult. Definitely, like it was an actual struggle to get it. Like just looking at a sector-wide perspective. So I, was able to look at what we won in all of the agreements. Whilst it was difficult, I do think the two examples mentioned by Sophie and Sean were really important, because one thing that I think strengthened and helped our campaign was the early wins that we got. So we could use those early wins to leverage wins at other places. We've got it at this place. Surely you can give it to us here. That strengthened our arguments. And those two examples that Sophie and Sean mentioned of UTAS and ACU are really important. So I think UTAS was important because it was a very public and visible and national campaign, cross-branch campaign, which put pressure on UTAS management, and they shifted in response. And the other thing was ACU, as was noted. So to get it at an extremely conservative religious institution, and not only to get it, but to have it named as gender affirmation leave and not as life leave or something like that, or some euphemism, I think was really important. And both UTAS and ACU were won early in the round of bargaining, and I think that helped. We could leverage at other branches. It didn't mean that it still wasn't difficult. And then there was still the difficulty about, well, can we get it, as Sophie said, as an annualized entitlement, or is it just an entitlement over the life of the agreement? And that's a struggle that continues.
Fantastic. Thanks, Damien. You might also remember at ACU, they also had the struggle around taking down of pride flags and the like. So at places like that, it wasn't only around this clause, but it's around the issues more broadly. And that branch, I know, fought particularly hard in difficult circumstances. David, defending the reputation of Melbourne University, I assume.
No, I just wanted to say that even at a place that's perceived as incredibly progressive like Melbourne, management said no to our claim for 7 months. And it wasn't until some activists, put pressure on a university and just really got so frustrated that they literally smashed some windows, that the vice chancellor sent out a deranged email to all staff, was still advocating for sort of, two-sidism around, the trans issue. And, the union then wrote a response to him directly, shared with all members. And within 2 weeks, we had won the full claim, including casuals. So I think that like we can't neglect like that the fact that keeping that pressure on the outside is just as important as what we do at the bargaining table. And we had the university's own gender affirmation coordinator at the bargaining table to say that, you know, they repeatedly had to tell people that they could do nothing for them around gender affirmation leave for them to change their tune.
Thanks, David. I've got Charlotte with her hand up now. Charlotte, from your thing, you might be joining us from the finance sector union. If that's the case, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm here from the FSU today. Thank you. Thank you for putting this on. It's actually been very helpful. My question's more of an ask, really, actually, for Sophie and the other people involved in this. When you ran these workshops in the workplace to sort of like get that buy-in and educate the workforce, I'm wondering if they're materials that I'm able to have a look at or get access to.
Big thumbs up from Sophie, and
I'll call you, because it'd be great to have a look at what you guys have, because I think at the FSU there's probably room for us to do more of that stuff.
Fantastic. And our ask of you, Charlotte, is that you distribute our wonderful handbook far and wide across your union.
Absolutely. I'll be bringing it into, we've got a very newly formed sort of queer committee at the FSU, and we're looking at doing this stuff in a much more targeted way as well. So it's really great stuff. Been very useful today. I'm glad I came.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Fantastic. Andrew Miller.
Yeah, hi comrades. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm flat on my back because I've got a bad back. Just going back to David's point and some of the other comments around the struggles early on. In South Australia, we were able to get 3 enterprise agreements in quick succession post all those non-union ballots, and it was really early days on this. If I remember it rightly, as a union, we were still evolving the language around how we were pursuing this claim, and I think we eventually sort of got it right. And at the same time, we were changing our language live in bargaining because it was still so early. And at that point too, if I recall, we didn't know what ambition to have in this space because we hadn't had too many flags in the ground, and so it was around that point that I think we started to get confidence, and we made this a mandatory settlement point. So we were still grappling as a union in that sort of infancy around this. And I remember the struggles we had in South Australia, but then with UTAS and elsewhere, I think we broke on through, as was happening elsewhere around the country. And then once one fell, others fell. But first off, when we were at the bargaining table, there was little comprehension around why this was an issue or what was valuable about this and why this mattered. But we found our way as a union collectively. We learned from each other, and I think it was really, really powerful. Because I still remember conversations where we were talking, and I'll use our updated language, gender affirmation leave, and they'll say, "Well, we'll give you plasma donor leave," and we're saying, "No, we're talking about something completely different." So we had to orientate university managements around the centrality and importance of this, and educate them as to why this even mattered, as we ourselves were learning and growing in confidence in this space. So I thank all the activists here that have taught me and our members and our comrades, because I think we learned as a union together. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew, for that really wonderful contribution about what happened across South Australia. Really appreciate it. I can't see any more hands up. Oh, Sophie, you would like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to address we've got a couple of questions before the session, and I've just seen some of them being here, and I just wanted to. We got some questions about people who are maybe non-binary or genderqueer and wishing to access the leave. And I just wanted to respond to that. So we've won different things across the sector. There've been some really problematic clauses actually in previous union agreements that add extra requirements. You have to use the leave within a year of coming out. You're only allowed to use it for medical and legal reasons. And what we've been pushing, we haven't won this everywhere, but we have been pushing for social affirmation to be included. And I just thought it would be worth people knowing that we have had people who are non-binary or you know, genderqueer in other categories that don't fit this kind of binary narrative of what it is to be trans, you know, who are struggling to get this leave. And I just wanted to, I guess, answer in a couple of ways. So first of all, part of being a path-breaking union means that we're still figuring out how to get it right. We've had to redraft and change our agreement a few different times. And I think now we have got that social affirmation enshrined, so that all forms of, whether it's taking some time off to email your colleagues about your gender identity, reintegrate yourself with HR, change the way you dress, all of those things are actually part of the gender affirmation journey. And a big part of what we've been fighting for is that there's no preference. If you've got a legal pathway, a medical pathway, a social pathway, it doesn't matter at all. And I think that's those questions that we've got about that, I think, are why it's so important that that's what we've been pushing for, and that's what the language you'll find in here and at most of the agreements, not everyone, but most of them. So that I just wanted to address that question of social affirmation, and that even in places where we haven't got it, I think the union's perspective is that purposes of gender affirmation leave does not mean getting surgery. And it does not mean getting bottom surgery or something like that. The language across the sector, even at places where we've only won it for medical and legal, I think we will have a very strong case to say, if you have any form of medical or legal procedure that's related to gender affirmation, that the union would 100% back you up on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, but I just wanted to say, have confidence, and also, you know, we're going to strive for better and better in the next agreement.
Fantastic. We certainly will, Sophie. Sun, you have your hand up.
Let's unmute. Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone that's worked on this. Obviously, for me personally, I am looking to take up this leave through my organisation, and I honestly did not think that I would ever see this in my lifetime, and I know that it wouldn't have been easy. I mean, we've worked at university. I've worked at universities, colleges, across the board, and we've lost some really good champions in our organisation lately. Our CEO was very supportive of our community. Our HR manager was very supportive, and they're both gone now. And I'm a little bit concerned in the fact where I'm going to try and take up on this leave, and being non-binary, genderqueer, not fitting that stereotypical window for them, how it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be bad, not saying it's going to be good, I don't know. But all in all, if it wasn't there, we wouldn't have been able to access it, and it's because of all of you. And I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. So thank you to everyone here that's done a great job.
Thanks, Sun. That's such a lovely contribution. Lisbeth, you have your hand up.
I do. I was just going to follow on from Sophie's comments. I think that there's the starting point is that any requirement for information needs to be reasonable. And essentially our view would be that you need, like, if you're seeking to access something like speech pathology can be seen as being a social thing, but it's also it's got a Medicare code next to it, so it's technically medical. You don't need to state what it is. You just need to have a thing from your, if you're providing a medical certificate, and that doesn't have to be the evidence, it would just need to state Elizabeth is undertaking some procedures for gender affirmation. They need, and this is the time that they need off. It doesn't need to be more specific than that. And if the employers are pushing on more specific information, then well, we have to push back collectively around that. Essentially, agreements are pieces of paper, and they don't mean anything if they're not properly enforced. But it's also really important that there was a comment that when Sophie was talking about the idea about there being a window that people have to access the leave and things like that, is that the language that we use needs to be really clear that a process of affirmation is personal. There's no there's not thresholds for you to be trans enough that other people can put in place, but also that because it's a personal process where people can change their mind about what they think they need in terms to affirm, so they could just socially affirm and then later on go, well, actually, there's other things I feel like I need to do to affirm my gender more, and they have the right to do that. And so it's really important in language that is developed around policy and things like that, that there aren't this idea that there's this you have to fit in this box that is trans, and if you don't get the entitlements. It's really, we need to be very clear that the people who get to decide what the process is the person who's going through the process of affirmation.
Thanks, Lisbeth. Lee, you've got your hand up, and if my memory serves me correctly, when I read the handbook the other day, you are one of our awesome contributors to it.
I just had a question. So we're starting to look at implementing the gender recognition, and one of the issues that I've seen is that the visibility approval process, it goes through the supervisor. And so at the moment, in order to take gender affirmation leave, the person would need to be up to their supervisor. It's now, that hasn't sort of come up. Like, I haven't had anyone come to me and say, well, hey, I'm really scared about coming out to my supervisor, but I still want to take gender affirmation leave. But is that a challenge that other people have faced in other years where we've done this?
Thanks, Lee. I had trouble hearing that question, but I saw some nodding, so I'm assuming it might have been clearer for other people. Sophie, Sean, you've got your hand up if you want to have a stab at answering.
Yeah, my understanding of the question was about the actual claiming of the leave. And just so people didn't hear it, was we were hearing some feedback or something.
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't have my mic in the right position. The question was just about leave approval processes, where like the standard leave approval process is it goes to your supervisor, and that works pretty well for most forms of leave, but it does leave a bit of a tricky situation for folks who are honestly afraid to come out to their supervisors or have other reasons to not want to come out to their supervisors.
Yeah. This was actually something that we've had at Sydney University. We had a transphobic, this was before we had the leave, a transphobic supervisor who had the right to deny someone personal leave, or they felt they had the right, and we were kind of trying to deal with that. And that's now been superseded by an absolute right in the agreement for gender affirmation leave. How it plays out on a policy level is going to matter. And this is why Elizabeth's point about, you know, what it says on the piece of paper and what it means in reality are can be two totally different things, or they're related, but we can do a lot more outside of the piece of paper of the enterprise agreement. I think our general policy and what we've said at Sydney Uni is that we want the leave approvals to happen centrally through HR, and such that you'll usually need to tell your supervisor that you're taking leave, but there's a difference between telling them that you're taking leave and telling them why you're taking leave, and there's quite an important difference. There are actually some reasons why people might not be in a position to disclose. They might be undergoing certain social or legal changes or medical changes on the side, and they're not yet ready to come out to their workplace. And so I think for us, we want like people's privacy is quite important. So we've tried to deal with that through policy here. And as I said before, I think the thing about having no requirements for documentation, even for that, we've won for periods of 5 days or less, actually is quite significant for some of those early days. So there's things you can do in the agreement, but there's heaps we can do when it comes to policy, and also just representing those members, having a place where they can come talk to queer unionists in the union and say, we've got your back, we're going to support you.
Sean, then Lisbeth.
I know in my workplace we've encountered this issue, and management were shocked by the fact when we went to them as unionists to say, look, there could be an issue with some people making the claim to their supervisor if they're not comfortable in that situation. So we're now working with, or putting pressure rather on management to say that we need an alternative pathway for people to be able to claim that leave, so that they can go to somebody else who will process their leave claim, and then their supervisor is just told this person's on leave for this period of time. But I think what that comes back to is we can't just expect, now that we've won it, that this claim is going to go wonderfully and management are going to enforce it with impeccable grace. You know, it's actually going to take us speaking to our fellow workers, picking up on the issues they have and then advocating to management on their behalf and with them for that particular change. And that's why it's so important that as we move from this phase of winning entitlement to winning proper enforcement, that we don't drop the ball on this and that we continue to see this as an ongoing struggle within the workplace, and that we continue to empower unionists on the ground in their workplace to stand by their fellow workers and to support them and to push management to ensure that it's implemented fairly.
Thanks, Sean. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like the process of developing policies, there's a lot of universities that don't have policies around how to support staff in general around affirmation. And so it's really important that they're fully fleshed out. So that's really clear that people get a right to do those processes and the line manager can't just say no. And if they do, then the university is going to have a problem, because essentially they're part of the discrimination. If they're letting managers do that, they're part of the discrimination process that's occurring in the workplace, and so they've got an obligation to ensure that they've got process to avoid and eliminate discrimination in the workplace. In terms of the question of authorization of leave, there's other leave types that there are generally provisions within the policy in policy as well that you don't necessarily have to get your line manager to approve for similar reasons. And there's an advantage in having more types of leave that are in that category, because it becomes a thing that's less clear to the line manager, who suddenly has a thing of, I've got a person who's on leave and it didn't come to me, exactly for what reason the person's taking leave. They can speculate to their heart's content that there might be, if there's 4 or 5 reasons, then like people don't know, and that's a positive thing as well for all of those types of leave, to make it so that people feel more comfortable in accessing the leave and not feeling like there'll be potential negative consequences.
Fantastic. Thank you. We are almost out of time, so unless there's a burning question, we'll start to wrap up and go through our asks. Again, any questions that were sent in and we haven't had time to answer, we will email people back. And remember, if you need to get in touch about issues that are raised today, please do so. Hey, just before we conclude and we go through the asks, I want to thank everybody joining us. Sorry, I've seen one hand go up. Okay, we'll have quickly one time for one question. Kura from Murdoch University, I think. Okay, on mute. All right, given the time and you're on mute. Okay, we'll come back to that question in an email or something, I think, because Kura's on mute. So before we conclude, I just want to kind of thank everybody for coming today. It's been such a fabulous and inspiring session. I remember several years ago when the stuff was kicking off at the University of Tasmania, Sophie, Sean, Elizabeth and I were preparing for, I think, our first of these kind of meetings, and Sophie was in New South Wales. But I know Elizabeth and Sean and I were standing around with a degree of trepidation about what we might face in the meeting. And I think we've come an enormous way since then. Who would have thought a couple of years down the track, 2 or 3 years down the track, we'd be celebrating what has really been a landmark achievement across our sector, and how much we have paved the way for workers across this country. But as Sophie noted earlier, not only within Australia, but in the international context. I think I can speak for Damien and I, this is something of which we are enormously proud of, the work that our union has done, the work that rank and file members have done by standing together and putting this on the agenda, by holding management to account. And it really demonstrates what we can achieve when we stand and we fight together. So CUTE has a series of asks that Sean went through earlier and will repeat, but I have one important to ask of you. It's really important, if we are going to continue to win in this space, that we get more people to join the union. So please ask your workmates to join. We're in a much stronger position when we have more of us campaigning together. These claims aren't easy to win, and we can win so much more when we all stand together. So Sean, I'm not sure if you want to do it again or if you'd like me to do it. CUTE had several asks for all of you. Do you want to go through them again, or would you like me to?
Happy to. So if you can share our handbook in your workplace through your queer and ally networks, get them across the issue. Come and join us. Join the union's Queer Caucus. There's some details in the chat on how to do so. But the most important thing you can do is join your union as a member. We are stronger together, and we've shown that through solidarity we can win a major claim for trans and gender diverse workers. And I'm so excited to see what we can win as a bigger, stronger union in the next round of bargaining.
Fantastic. So thanks, Damien, Sean, and Sophie for your presentations today. Thanks to the Mighty Cute for all of your hard work on this. And fantastic, everyone. Thanks for coming on to a great and really inspiring session. Take care and have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.